So I've just done my marathon Matchbox catalogue session, and I thought I would try and keep momentum up and work through my Corgi catalogues that have been sat here for some time. So as you can see, this is the 1979 Corgi Toys catalogue with a Moonraker shuttle displayed proudly on the front cover, and this of course is my little baby Corgi Moonraker shuttle, still in an original blister pack. So this is exactly the sort of thing that I remember from my childhood, and it's the sort of thing that Corgi did very, very well. So let's get into this one. And so here you can see the larger example of the Moonraker shuttle. What's interesting about that one is that I don't recognise that form of the satellite. The satellite was more a goldy colour in the ones that I've seen, but maybe that was an early pre-production version of it, as they often are in these catalogues. I've also got I think I've got this, which is the James Bond Lotus Esprit. I think that's probably the same version from the looks of it, size-wise. No missiles in mine, but you can see the missile holes are there. And you know, these toys have gone down the years, because I'm sure a lot of people had them because they were such clever licensing tie-ins. Obviously this is the James Bond page, but for, you know, sort of British kids, these were all very, very desirable things to have, I have no doubt, and I'm sure they were on a lot of people's Christmas wish lists. So well played Corgi on that front, and Corgi were very well tuned into this sort of thing, as you can see from this page. So despite the fact that Superman doesn't really need a spacecraft to get around in, although in fairness sometimes he's depicted as needing oxygen in space, we have here a Superman spacecraft amongst other things, and of course a van with Superman on the side of it, which makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah, I've got nothing on that one. But also interesting, Spider-Man right next door to him. And I have a very small Spider-Man chopper. The irony again about the Spider-Man vehicles is Spider-Man could never afford vehicles. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, was always skint in the comics. He never had any money, especially not at the time of the comics when, you know, when these toys were coming out. So it's ironic that they should do all this merchandising involving vehicles for Spider-Man, when in fact he never ever had any whatsoever. Batman, of course, is an obvious exception to that, because Batman did indeed have various vehicles at his disposal in the comics, and I had examples of all of these sort of primary Batmobile, Batboat, Batcopters. Sadly don't have them anymore. Watched with wry amusement an auction the other day as a set of these was attracting quite a lot of interest, and you see them in all sorts of states of disrepair on the auctions. Some of them have definitely seen better days. Many of them lack their figures. Even more probably have jammed missile launchers in the back of the Batmobile. But I remember I have very fond memories of playing with these, as I'm sure many people do. They were very sort of iconic toys of that particular era. And you know, this was just as the 70s was kind of tailing out, and these of course were based on the Batman TV series with Adam. It is Adam West, isn't it? I'm not making that up, am I? No. So yeah, very, very fond memories of those. Even this Hulk as well, which I don't remember ever seeing before, and a Captain America Jetmobile. So I mean, sort of these days you see, and a Captain Marvel Porsche. Now that's really interesting. Is it the modern female Captain Marvel? Was she around back then? I don't know, you know. I don't know if that's a different character or not. That's really interesting, because that is in the Marvel section. So we've got TV's Crime Busters, we've got The Saint and The Professionals, Charlie's Angels, Starsky and Hutch, you know, all that sort of good stuff. None of these I had. I think I was too young to be into that sort of level of series. I do kind of remember the names, but I don't remember watching them. Starsky and Hutch maybe a little bit more. What's the other one from? Oh, Kojak. So the Buick, the bottom left one is from Kojak. Okay. We've also got the Muppets. If you remember, Matchbox had Disney, but Corgi apparently got the Muppets. Now, I've just done a video on these chaps here on the left, the Exploratrons. So indeed, I've so recently done it that I can show you one alongside the image here. It looks like I might be slightly missing a missile actually, but there is the X1 Rocketron that I have, complete with tracks still, which is quite an impressive feat. Whether or not I've actually got the right missile in there, I'm not entirely sure, but that's it alongside its catalogue entry, which is nice. So yeah, so only 4 of those released, just with various sort of gimmicks, like magnifying glasses and so on. I've no idea what the Lasertron was actually supposed to do. Fully manoeuvrable reflector and wide-sprung wheels. So it is supposed to be just a kind of like a reflective thing, I think. It's not more clever than that. And we've got various police vehicles on the right-hand side. So again, more sort of standard police and rescue teams kind of stuff, which all of the catalogues tend to do that. Dinky did that as well, and so did Matchbox, obviously. I remember that Surf Rescue Chopper Squad Jet Ranger helicopter. I think that was from a TV series as well. I think that was a tie-in. Someone's been ticking off these catalogue entries as well, but it's not me. This was not mine. And again, we've got various sort of generic cars there. You notice that a lot of these now have the sort of the opening doors and bonnets and so on. So you know they are sort of upping their game in terms of the quality level, I think, to try and stay in the game basically. Because even in '79, I suspect the market for these was getting a little bit more limited already. I'm pretty sure I had this one. I think I had that. There is another one as well that looks similar, that sort of black and gold race car. Sorry about the shine, I may have overlit this for these purposes. Oh, that's right, yeah, and it came with a sort of a trailer and another car. Yeah, I could have had that. Don't recognise any of those on that page though. Coca-Cola tie-in. They got Coca-Cola and Matchbox got Pepsi. Don't remember any of those. Rather curious. Now this is interesting. So there's a collector's checklist here, and Dinky do this as well. Dinky have this sort of section inside the catalogue so that you can have a look at what they do and whether or not you've got them. So that's clever. Now, interestingly, some of those say not available in the UK. That's very interesting. So this must have been quite an international sort of catalogue. I'll just leave these on screen for a minute so that if you want to have a look more closely at them, you can do for reference. That is interesting that some of them are said not to be UK versions. Interesting. Okay. So again, don't recognise any of those sort of utility kind of vehicles there. Down on the Farm. No. Gene Richards Circus? I have no idea what that refers to. If you know who or what Gene Richards Circus was, do let me know, because I don't have a clue. Obviously a thing somewhere, but not for me personally. A few aircraft, the odd helicopter, big guns. I would say not as many big guns though as perhaps Dinky or Matchbox were doing at the same sort of time, interestingly. So maybe not, unless there's more on the next page. No, there aren't, so not a huge emphasis. I'm pretty sure I had that Esso tanker. So I remember the its engine bonnet coming up quite a long way, if it's the one I'm thinking of. What's that? Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, on the occasion of her Silver Jubilee. Ah, there we go. In June 77 in a 79 catalogue. Okay, well, there you go. See, so now we get into this sort of stuff. So that little shuttle that I showed you right at the beginning is that shuttle there. Now you can see that guy on the left. So that's the sort of card that they used to come on. The one that I've got, I think, is more from a sort of multi-pack type card, because it's branded slightly different. I think they sold them in boxes where you could just sort of pick one off the counter. This is the smaller version of the 007 Lotus Esprit that you also see quite a lot of around the place. So it lacks the features of that larger one that I showed you, but it's, you know, same idea. That one I've seen recently on a Leicester Vintage Toy Shop Toys on Tour video, which is quite funny, because I think the lads initially thought it was Jaws as in the shark movie, but in fact it's Jaws as in James Bond's Jaws, which is perfectly understandable, really, because they are very similar eras after all. So these are all the sort of smaller ones. So I've got this one now. I've picked that up recently. It's quite a nice example of it. I've got two versions of this. Superman's, in fact, there was a big version of it and a small version. And the small version, which I think is this one, also has the fists in different colours. So I've got one that's the silvery fist and ones that are sort of red plasticky fists. So I think that changed with time. That's the small Batmobile, and that is a Joker vehicle, which I've also got an example of elsewhere. I don't have the Batcopter. I did have when I was little, but I don't have at the moment. So neither of those at the moment. I do have this Spider Copter. I've got a small Spider Copter. That's elsewhere. I don't recognise any of the others on there, so I don't have any example. Now I do have. Again, this is another one where Corgi did really well, because this is the Liberator from Blake 7. And I have an example of it, but I have the yellow and silver example of it. And in case you're wondering, it flies in that direction, because these are its guns. They're not its engines, they're its guns. That's its engine. And I think I had this Surf Chopper when I was little as well, but I don't have a version of it currently. But, you know, Corgi for me definitely had some of the better science fiction tie-ins, which were sort of, you know, tickled my fancy at the time. Let's have a look here what we've got. I had that police chopper. I very much remember the shape of that police chopper. I definitely had that one. Not noticed that one before, but I definitely had it. Don't recognise any of the others particularly. No. Okay. So that was their sort of generic small car engine. Now see, this is completely random. Why on earth have they got a second different coloured Liberator in the same catalogue? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I don't know why they decided to go for that as a concept in the same catalogue. Why would you do that? Anyway. In fact, that looks more sort of blue coloured. So I've no idea why they went for that as a concept. But anyway. And they've also got a generic NASA space shuttle, which obviously is probably derived from their Moonraker space shuttle, or vice versa, which would make perfect sense to do if you get licensing. Nothing else there that rings any bells for me. Corgi twin packs. So obviously now this is a small scale. I think that's a small scale version of the Batmobile and Batboat. And I've effectively got the contents of that twin pack. It's nice as well that you can actually, they've actually sort of shown you how it was packaged. So if you were looking for it, you could presumably spot it from a distance. Was what their thinking was there. Try not to miss a page. There we go. So they seriously package a Blake 7 Liberator with a NASA space shuttle. Okay, they did apparently. That makes no sense, but anyway, who am I to question their thinking? There's a space pack, I guess. And you can get a triple pack with a little Batcopter and the Batboat and the Batmobile as well. I bet that's worth a lot if you could find it carded these days. Yeah, probably. Don't recognise any others. Supersets, apparently. So a fire station, a police station and a filling station. But slightly less excitingly. Yeah, okay, and then various gift sets as well, which obviously these days would be quite handy if you wanted a quick source for several examples of the old school. And that is the end of that. So you can see they were called they're called Mettoy, I think they are. That was the name of the company. There were various companies associated with the various brands. So the brands are, you know, the Corgi name isn't actually the name of the company. It's just the brand under which these sorts of toys were being produced. So we'll skip on to this is the 1980 catalogue. So a slightly less brand worthy front cover there. But immediately we're straight into the superhero tie-ins there. So we've got a James Bond multi-pack there. Now those look to me to be all the larger ones, because otherwise that satellite wouldn't be in there. That's the style of satellite that I remember having. And that is the larger Superman spacecraft. And these are all the larger sort of Spider-Man toys. I've never had that Spider-Copter. I've seen it on an eBay auction recently, although it was a very sort of broken version of it. So this is obviously going for the... So opening doors reveal Superman's mobile laboratory. Right, so that Superman van must be a bigger one than the one I've got. So those must be the larger size of super vehicles there, I think. So got to bear in mind, this is a year on from the previous catalogue, but it's all the same stuff. I'm pretty sure I had that I remember that Bat bike. I definitely had that when I was little. I'm not sure I recognised it last time round, but I definitely had it. Because I remember having the missiles in the front there. So again, these are all the usual suspects. You know, we've seen a lot of these already. Slightly different layout. A few new entries there, but not radically different. Okay. So a few more helicopters there, perhaps than last time, but lots of generic police cars again. On the plus side, I suppose they might well have been a little bit cheaper, perhaps, than the sort of the brand tie-ins. I don't know when a lot of brand tie-ins did attract a higher pricing back then, you know, as they would do now. I don't know how much they would have had to have paid for the licenses back in those days. So apparently those have got new plastered all over them, and I don't recall them from the last catalogue, I must admit. But again, you know, lots and lots of opening hatches, a lot of small hinge work going on there to give them that bit more interest. And again, new being splattered across everything. That Texaco. Sorry, this light is proving less than brilliant. Various new racing cars there, I think. Little mini racer, that's quite cute. Team Corgi, obviously. Okay. Yeah, again, more of the same. Again, a lot of repeats there from last time, I think it's fair to say. Some new as well, apparently. Various safari type things there. Still got the Coca-Cola tie-in going, it seems. Nice black cab. Okay. Still got the petrol tankers and so on, various. For those who want to keep their pretend roads clean. Various agricultural machines. A little strong on the farming front there, actually, perhaps, than the last catalogue. Still got the circus set. Still got the 1977 Silver Jubilee set as well, strangely, despite it now being quite old hand. Still doing a few planes and the odd helicopter, fewer helicopters though I think than last time. The big guns are identical to the previous last big guns, so no change there. We've still got the Exploratrons, we've still got the Muppets, so they're all still present and correct. I'm not going to do an animal impression. Now here's the first example of Buck Rogers. Now, I loved Buck Rogers growing up. It hasn't aged particularly well, although in fairness to it, I haven't watched it that recently, so I might just see how terribly it has or hasn't aged for myself soon. But interestingly, this picture is not representative of the version of the toy that you actually get. That is actually a starfighter from the television series, and yet strangely they've put this bar on the front as if it were the toy, but this is in fact the toy. This is the big version of it anyway, and as you can see it's broadly similar to that, so it was quite a good mould, but it isn't exactly the same because the pictured one simply doesn't have things like the missile launchers on it, for example. So I'm not quite sure what their thinking was there, because I think that's a bit cheeky personally, because they're not actually showing off the actual toy. I love this toy. This is not my original one. This is one I picked up since, but it's in quite good shape. And these were potentially lethal. You can see why they put the bar on the front, because this is full die-cast metal. This, if this spike had hit a child's eye, that would be the eye gone very swiftly. But the wings still fold in and out on this one, so they can disappear quite happily like that. So it was just a really, really good, big, solid toy. I think this is the first time it's appeared in the catalogue, because this would have tied in nicely with the timing of the series. And again, you see that's the pure white Liberator again with a slightly different background that we saw in the last catalogue, and the smaller Spider-Man toys. So I think we've seen all of those before. I mean, they are labelling some of those as new. That Thor Thunderbird rings a vague bell for me, but all of those, some of those are new, some of them are repeats. And again, little Batcopter I had, little Batmobile. That's one of the smaller super. You call it a supermobile, yeah. And the little van, little Joker-mobile. So all of those are fairly common appearances from the last catalogue. And again, you see, this is Liberated, like this poor alternative Liberator stuck in the middle of a page with tractors and diggers on it. I mean, I've no idea what they were thinking with that. Just completely random. But anyway, as I said before, mine is not to reason why, as they say. So still the Coca-Cola. Oh, they've got a Pepsi van there as well. Pepsi next to Coca-Cola. Gosh, that's brave. What have we got here? Oh, the Goodyear blimp. Yeah, I remember. I think it had the Goodyear blimp. Because the blimps were like, sort of quite big things, I think, in the States at the time, for whatever reason. Because obviously, they're very good for advertising purposes. But yeah, I think I definitely had one. Don't recognise anything else on that page from my own personal memory, so I shall move on. I mean, so many of these toys are getting. I mean, so it's these are twin packs, right? Yes, I mean it's repetitious, but it's repetitious for a reason, obviously, because they are trying to sell you them as grouped items here. And again, we've got some. So that's the Moonraker space shuttle with a Drax helicopter, and Drax is the baddie in the Moonraker films. That makes sense. And yeah, backpacks. And again, the sort of little reference image in case your child is struggling to identify which toys they want. And again, we've got the Liberator paired with the Space Shuttle for no apparent reason. Good. Oh, that's interesting. Is that a full... Oh, so these are gift sets. So this gift set's stepping it up a notch, I would suggest. Because that's got quite a few bits and pieces in it. As is that. Yeah, I mean those would have been impressive things to give to your kid for their birthday. It has to be said, because you'd effectively get the full range in one fell swoop. I think getting those. And then we've got the supersets and just various sort of more generic groupings of the more sort of standard vehicles there. So yeah, so that's obviously not radically different. Now the next catalogue gets a little bit shorter, and I'm not actually sure if this seems to be the original front of it. It's not terribly exciting, is it? I mean, it's like it's a Corgi container. Okay, great. But this is the 81 catalogue, I believe. So which makes me smile, because the first guy on the front page is Dan Dare, Pilot of the Future. Except Dan Dare is a very, very old comic book character who you may never have heard of, because he is deeply old. I mean, he's like early 1950s old. And that is exactly how he appeared in the comics, of which I do have some very old examples somewhere. And quite why Corgi chose to resurrect him at this point to try and, sell toys of him in 1981, I don't know. He was probably still in comics at that time. He may just about still been in comics, so that's probably why. But obviously, he would have been a cheaper comic tie-in than Spider-Man here, who is still rocking the same toys that he was back in '79, incidentally, albeit with slightly different photos. But this catalogue is a lot lighter. So again, we're still selling the James Bond Moonraker shuttle, now in its third year. But you can see the Buck Rogers advertising starting to kick in. Now that is the toy. That is the toy I just showed you, because the wings are distinctively yellow, and you can see all the colorations the same. And it did come with figures. The boxed version comes with figures, which obviously are exactly the sort of things that then go missing in the sort of the second-hand market. But my toys is that toy basically, but there is a smaller version as well. So we've got so still the James Bond gift sets and stuff available there. Very sort of TV detective tie-ins. You can see they've thought a bit more about the way that they're grouping and displaying these sets, because you've now got a full sort of Batman page with the Batman logo and the Superman logo there, which makes sense because they're DC. They should be grouped together really. But I think they've been a little bit slow on the mark. Interestingly, that's the first time I've noticed that having red fists, but that's the big version, not the little version. But they've obviously changed it from silver. Maybe that it was manufacturing issues or something, and they've switched over to the red plastic for those now. Muppet's still going. Again, different pictures in this catalogue compared to the previous ones, and still doing the circus set, but they've moved sort of up forward in the catalogue compared to where they were before. Corgi-tronic. Oh, that's interesting. So these have got sound associated with them, have they? The superb sonic controlled set contains a die-cast metal articulated Leyland cap. Okay. Click and the truck is on the move. Click and it stops. Right. Okay. So sort of kind of quasi remote control then, from the looks of it. So they've kept their more generic cars a little bit later on, but they're definitely upping the ante in terms of their sort of image work here. And now we've got an example of the boxes that they come in as well for the more generic cars. I mean, these do look terribly generic, it has to be said. I think this was sort of around the time Corgi were really starting to struggle. I don't actually have. I think I've got a trade catalogue that's slightly later than this, but not a normal catalogue. So I wonder if they were starting to go at this point. So just more their sort of rally car. So even this one is still going. It's not as obviously prominent as it has been in previous catalogues, but it is still there. So again, you see, you know, it's not unusual in these days for these same toys to be going for a good 2, 3, 4 years even, and these catalogues give you a good idea of that, because you know you wouldn't really be able to find out otherwise. So more gift sets there, big glider set. That's probably new actually. I imagine the red stars are their subtle indicators to say that we're still producing new toys at this point. That's the fire and the rescue services kind of set. I'm just want to make sure I didn't miss a page. No. More sort of fairly generic stuff. I don't know why they would have been doing quite so many of these to try and keep themselves going, but obviously they felt it was ones that they could sell. Still doing the road cleaning bit. Now, see, interestingly, they've retooled the Moonraker space shuttle satellite to fit inside a larger NASA shuttle now. So they've obviously decided to reuse the Moonraker shuttle, you know, sort of castings to do that one with. There's that Dan Dare again. It's a Dan Dare car, is it? I rather assumed it was a spaceship, but it's a car apparently. And there we've got the Batbike, the Batmobile, but interestingly they don't look like the large ones there. Those are the small ones. So that's probably a page for the smaller ones, I think, rather than the bigger ones. Yep, so still doing the Space Shuttle Liberator team up there. And that's the James Bond Space Shuttle that I showed you right at the start of the video there as well, of course. They've got the Pink Panther motorcycle, which I sort of smiled at. What else have they got there? Tom's Cart, Jerry's Banger. Oh, Tom and Jerry, right, okay, yeah. St. Vegas. Now that Buck Rogers Starfighter here, that's the small one. You can tell it's a small one because although the coloration is very, very similar to the big one, it's got a blue cockpit, which is a dead giveaway that it's the small one because the big one's got a gold cockpit. They do look very, very similar just at a glance, but the stickers at the back here are slightly different as well. This has got sort of stripes where you get a more sort of solid sticker on the back of the big one. So that's the small 76mm Buck Rogers Starfighter. You see what I was half expecting to see here was actually their Star Trek ships, but I haven't seen them here. And they did release some, but they were quite late in the day, and they are in the, well, I say they're in the other big Corgi catalogue I've got, but actually they are and they aren't, because they're not actually the ones that eventually got released. So yeah, interesting that they're not in here actually by 81. So I wonder if there was another catalogue after this that was the sort of standard consumer catalogue. Don't think we've seen, yeah, I'm going to say we haven't seen this before. That's a new entry. Per the red star up top right, I think. What the blue stars are, I've no idea, because they've suddenly switched to blue stars on that page in amongst the red stars. So whether or not that's a reissue or something, I don't know. But again, didn't have any of those. The Goodyear blimp is still going. Can't say that I remember having any of the ones on this page either particularly. And that's it. So you can see then 1981. Mettoy Playcraft Limited, Northampton, UK. So yeah, I mean, I seem to have caught those catalogues just as Corgi was sort of petering out, unfortunately. But they are responsible for quite a few of my very, very favourite toys from my childhood, because they did the sort of science fiction and so on sort of tie-ins. So it's a shame that they didn't last a little bit longer, but that is of course the way of things. So thanks for bearing with, and I will shortly bring you the last of my Dinky catalogues. Cheers for now.